do one for Saturday, but I had in my mind, so I'm going to do it anyway. Continue on with Sermon on the Mount book, the Word of God, and the teachings of Jesus Christ, chapter 16. We get into it right now. Chapter 16 is about the law and the prophets. We get to the NBA What If book, the Ultimate History book. That's it. We'll be done for today. Be back on Monday. First, get into the Word of God. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. This is from Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Jesus' first reference to the law of Moses. The explicit focus at this stage is the law, the very law that was given to Moses approximately 13 BC. The Mosaic law is perhaps better understood when you see that it's basically in three parts: the moral law, the Ten Commandments, the ceremonial law, the way God wanted his ancient people to worship. Third law is the civil law, the way that people of Israel were to be governed. So it was only a matter of time before Jesus would say something about the law. So Matthew tells us that Jesus went throughout Galilee teaching in the synagogues, preaching the gospel, the good news of the kingdom. Matthew chapter 4, verse 23, but there was no mention of the law. His opening verse in the Sermon on the Mount was, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Is the preaching of the law a prerequisite to being poor in spirit? No. But there will certainly be those listening to see what he would have to say about the law. The atmosphere in those days was charged with some strong views and various opinions about the law. So was the law a new subject when Jesus comes to this point, part of the sermon? In other words, has Jesus actually changed the subject, or was not his understanding of the law behind his teaching of the Beatitudes all along? Matthew has not related any controversy between Jesus and the Jews regarding the issue of the law. There is no indication that Jesus said anything about the law prior to his preaching the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus certainly knew what his hearers were thinking, including those theologically minded, critical Jews who took their own interpretation of the law very seriously. So was Jesus surmising that they anticipated some definitive statement from him regarding the law? Why did Jesus say, "Do not think"? Why did Jesus say, "Do not think that"? Well, three possibilities at least: that some first may have suspected that the law wasn't needed in the light of Jesus' teaching. There was certainly no need for the law at all for the attitudes to be experienced and exemplified. Look at each of them in their progressive order, and you will see that what Jesus taught could have been said had there never been a Mosaic law. No law was needed in order to experience the attitudes. We have already seen that the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' doctrine of the Holy Spirit. So we have further seen that the kingdom of heaven as the realm of the hungry spirit reigning in us. Law was simply not needed in anything he's taught so far. Some might have said, if we take this Jesus of Nazareth seriously, we won't even need the law of Moses. Some would be horrified at this. Some enemies of Jesus might have hoped to say, "I told you so." They may have thus concluded he is going to say sooner or later that he has come to abolish the law. Do not think I have come to abolish the law, for that wasn't his purpose in coming to the world, after all. Secondly, Jesus may have said this: "Do not think I have come to abolish the law," because some rumors were going around about Daniel's Son of Man showing up. Jesus was perceived as a very unusual person, even an apocalyptic figure. One who appeared suddenly as if from out the blue could have meant this continuity with the past, Jesus being revelation directly from God. There were indeed rumors of an apocalyptic figure called the Son of Man who would inaugurate a new era. There were also rumors about this apocalyptic figure when he came would abolish the law, once again start over again with something else. The Beatitudes certainly come close. Nobody had ever heard teaching like that. So what was different about the Beatitudes when compared to the law? The answer probably is a person was given an eternal peace through brokenness, meekness, hungry after righteousness without any law or whatever. Furthermore, Jesus' teaching promised a different kind of greatness as inheriting the earth. He seeing God. If one was poor in spirit, merciful, and a peacemaker, they were seen as blessed, happy, and anointed. Not only that, Jesus teaching about the kingdom of heaven is not so much about life here on earth, but eternal bliss plus what's laid beyond this sphere of life. In the law, the emphasis was entirely on the here and now. You'll be blessed in the city, blessed in the country. The Lord will send a blessing on your bones. Jesus spoke of reward in heaven. No one had heard of talk like that before. Such teaching could have been seen as preempting the law altogether. Remember, too, that the God of Israel was seen as Father. With rumors abroad that an apocalyptic leader was going to do away with the law, it will explain why Jesus said to them, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law." Thirdly, revolutionaries were around who would have relished such a possibility. They would have destroyed the law in one stroke if things were left to them. Another reason Jesus brought in the law in Matthew chapter 5 verse 17 was because he had just preached that our light should shine before others and show good works to glorify our Father. Could Jesus' way to produce good works have circumvented the law? Yes. Apart from further speculation as to what made him say it, we only know that Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish the law or their prophets." The prophets, some Jews were thinking he would abolish the law. That was never his plan at all. Not only the law, but also the prophets. Now, why bring in the prophets? Or the prophets like Samuel, Elijah, Jeremiah, a whole contention? The priest was seen as rivals to the priesthood. The priesthood was an integral part of the ceremonial law. The priests were threatened by the prophets, who turned up years after Moses gave Israel the law. Sadducees, in particular, regarded themselves as a successor of the ancient priest Zadok. Sadducees hated the idea of the prophets. Indeed, they despised anything that smacked the prophetic. They would not have wanted the law to be abolished. If it's freedom to do away with the prophets, they would welcome almost any powerful figure who would render the prophets completely extinct, believing that the Elijahs and Elishas of this world were necessary in the first place. We need to be reminded from time to time that we probably do not have the whole Jesus Sermon on the Mount. You can read the Sermon on the Mount in 10 to 12 minutes. Now, Jesus refers to himself. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 reveals when Jesus referred to himself for the first time, I, showing his self-conscious authority, do not think I. Some person may say, what does this mean? What does this man think he is, referring to himself that way? But he knew all eyes were focused on him. And they were wondering, what exactly is this man? Never a man spoke like this man. Not only that, he refers to himself twice. And I think I have come to abolish the law, or the prophets have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. This meant a conscious, personal, confident undertaking to fulfill the law rather than nullify it. But what an extraordinary thing to say, and yet what authority would he have to abolish the law that he wanted to? He wasn't even a member of the Sanhedrin. The law was 1,300 years old. And what authority would he have to abolish the prophets? The prophets go back to Samuel, not to mention Moses, the race of the prophets. Jesus later called Abel a prophet. What boldness, what presumption that he would even suggest he could abolish the law and the prophecy had he wanted to. Behind this comment is a dignity and unpretentious knowledge that unveils more authority than any mortal man ever claimed or witnessed. It's very saying it says that he knew he had such authority, indeed the power to do whatever he chose to do. He hadn't been on the scene long, perhaps only a few weeks or months. Here's a man talking about what he has to do or not to do. He exhibits an amazing purpose, but without any arrogance or impertinence. He was meekness and calmness personified. He spoke boldly as a lion. These words, I have come, also show a self-conscious arrival, as if from elsewhere than Galilee. He knows he has appeared at such a time as this, for a special purpose. He does not say what he might have said, that he was sent. He could have, but here he only says, I have come. So a new era has arrived. Jesus effectively announces a new era. In speaking this, Paul is telling us that the law was a temporary measure from the start. It was never intended to be permanent. It was only added, and this was a specific period of time. It turns out that the law was a parenthesis in salvation history that lasted 1,300 years, so the gospel was first announced to Abraham. This was around 1700 BC, when Abraham was justified by his faith. The The law came 430 years later, which was when the parentheses began. Galatians chapter 3, verse 17. 1500-year parentheses ended when Jesus died on the cross. And yet it was not presumptuous for Jesus to speak this way. He already healed the sick, given relief to paralytics, cast out demons. He preached the gospel of the king at a time when the field was charged with messianic expectancy. Jesus' preaching was a personal, unobtrusive, non-imposing authority that came through as he spoke. He knew who he was, why he had come, and that his appearance was pivotal on the world stage. He wore this unprecedented self-understanding with humility and grace. He had not yet been accused of breaking the Sabbath, and he had not been accused yet of blasphemy. That came later. The common people, in any case, heard him gladly. He was developing an awe and appreciation from among grassroots. Then came this straightforward assertion: I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Whatever reasoning among his critics there may have been, Jesus' teaching certainly didn't need the law of Moses. Whatever the rumors, this apocalyptic figure could overthrow the law and start all over again. He had chosen to do so. Whatever the hopes of certain revolutionaries who would be glad if all traditions were smashed, Jesus sent a signal that would have thrilled some but disappointed others. For it turns out that if Jesus' teaching gave hope to some that an abrogation of the law was on offer, they would have to look elsewhere. So if it was a radical discontinuity with Moses and the prophets that they wanted, if it was rejecting a righteous standard that would bless or exalt any nation, Proverbs chapter 14, verse 34, but he made it clear that he was not going to do away with such things. Next, we got the continuity with the law and prophets. Far from there being in discord break between his teaching and the law, Jesus shows continuity between himself and the law and the prophets. The Greek word for abolish here is katalusi, which means to abrogate, to nullify. Jesus had not come to nullify the law, to tender it, and the 10th tribe is irrelevant. Any such rumor is put to rest. The speculation about what he may do regarding the law is now over. It's interesting that Jesus puts the two together, law and prophets. He will fulfill both of these. He might have said he would nullify the law but affirm the prophets. That would have pleased some, no doubt. He might have said he will affirm the law but reject the prophetic. That would have pleased the Sadducees. Had he said he was going to abrogate both the law and the prophets, it would have pleased certain revolutionaries. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus says that both the law and prophets have continuity, relevance for the new era he himself was announcing at this moment. It is true, there will be more application in the Sermon on the Mount regarding the law than what about the prophets. But Matthew himself wouldn't show how Jesus' ministry fulfilled Old Testament prophecy. Most of the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' interpretation of the law, his doctrine of the Spirit. The straightforward assertion was this: I will fulfill them, not abolish them. Yet by saying he will fulfill the law, he will be making a significant interpretation of it. In one stroke, Jesus asserts that the law was always meant to be temporary, but that it was never meant to be permanent in the first place. The fulfillment meant the law would end. And furthermore, Jesus saying that the law was not complete in itself. It represented unfinished business. This would upset a lot of Pharisees and Sadducees who would see the law as the be-all and end-all. For one thing, the whole sacrificial system, a part of the law, pointed beyond itself. The ceremonial law included the sacrifice of animals need to be fulfilled. The moral laws also need to be fulfilled because no person had truly kept it. The law then would be fulfilled by its being kept, which Jesus was promising to do. The law therefore required more work to be done. It had never been fulfilled, but Jesus announced that he himself would do it. The prophecies of the Old Testament also needed fulfillment, and yet they were being fulfilled as Jesus spoke. The Messiah had been promised. It would be seen in days ahead that Jesus was that Messiah. God promised an anointed servant. Thus came this most stunning affirmation from Jesus: "I will fulfill the law and the prophets." He will also do what had never been done. He would not only keep the law but fulfill it, but be the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Old Testament. He will therefore be the fulfillment of the law, including the ceremonial law. and the fulfillment of the prophecies of people like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Daniel. The law was actually pointing Jesus from the first day it was announced by Moses, when it was accompanied with thunder and lightning at Sinai. The prophets of old, moreover, from Abel to Moses to Malachi, were talking about Jesus. The law and the prophets embody what we now call the Old Testament. Jesus could have said that he would fulfill the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms, which was also his way of dividing the Old Testament in Luke chapter 24, verse 46. But it would suffice to say here that he would fulfill the law and the prophets. No, not end them, not nullify them, not abolish or abrogate them, but he will fulfill them. It was not only the most stunning and amazing statement Jesus ever made, but it was the most stupendous claim any human being ever made. He made this extraordinary prediction about himself near the beginning of his ministry. As will come in the next chapter, in the exposition of the verses that follows, not to mention the event of the cross, it was a promise Jesus had kept when he cried out, "It is finished," in John chapter 19, verse 30. He knew he had kept his word. It was then that the unfinished business was completed. The parentheses was closed, and Jesus became what Paul would call the end of the law in Romans chapter 10, verse 4. So that's it for that. On Monday, I'll be in mission accomplished. Do not think I have come to abolish the law, or the prophets have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. It's from Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. I'm going to break that down on Monday. I'm going to break it down on Sunday. Come back on Monday. All right, so let's get into this basketball book I've been reading for a while. Get into the Dallas Mavericks from the Ultimate NBA History What If book. Then we'll read about the franchises and NBA, about the history and the what if element to it. That's the thing I like about this book. Let's get into the Dallas Mavericks. Right. This history of the Dallas Mavericks is really a tale of two halves. The first half, or 20 years in that scenario, was marked by NBA futility. It consisted of 6 winning seasons. It had a good stretch from 1983 to 1988, and a 14 losing season. Then, in all, the Mavericks went 644 and 964 in their first 20 seasons, an average of 32 wins and 50 losses per game, per season. That past 22 years, the second half has seemed to become one of the most successful franchises in the NBA. They have experienced incredible 18 winning seasons in the past 22, have an overall record of 1,062, 701, an average of 49 wins, 33 losses per season, almost a perfect inverse of their first 20 seasons in the NBA. They had guys like, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Jason Terry, Michael Finley, Jason Terry, Tyson Chandler, Sean Marion, Rick Carlisle, Don Nelson, Avery Johnson, and now, recently was Luka Doncic. Now he's a Laker, but he was with them. Jalen Brunson played with the Dallas Mavericks, and two people who were at the forefront of this transformation was Dirk Nowitzki and Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban purchased the team, and that's 25 years ago, on January 4th, 2000. But when you look at Dirk Nowitzki, he definitely was a game changer, because the Mavericks traded for the draft rights of Nowitzki in 1998 NBA draft. Dirk was very beloved. He played from 1998 to 2019. A 7-foot that could shoot. And then you look at that situation, he made the franchise even more what it is. So let's get into it, man. The Mavericks are born in the midst of the NBA's toughest era financially. There was chatter as early as 1978 about there being an NBA franchise in Dallas, as the struggling Buffalo Braves briefly considered relocating to Dallas before settling on San Diego and becoming the Clippers. A few Texas businessmen started to pool funds and get a presentation together. The league was initially resistant to the idea of the third NBA team in the state of Texas, the Houston Rockets, and the recent addition of the San Antonio Spurs in 1976. as part of the NBA ABA merger. Former NBA commissioner announced during an NBA All Star weekend in 1979 that the league would have two expansion teams for the 1980-81 season, one in Dallas and one in Minnesota. While the ownership group for the approved Minnesota team backed out, Dallas followed through, and the group paid the 12.5 million expansion fee to join a league that saw 18 of its 22 franchises lose money in the 1978-79 season. TV ratings went down 26, 26%, 26% because of the dearth of high-level marketable talent and the drug, specifically cocaine epidemic that swept the country and the league. NBA was in the worst place it has ever been. Soon to be saved by Magic and Bird in the 1980s, but that is a different story. The moniker Mavericks won in a local newspaper contest to determine the team's name, with Wranglers and Express being a close second and third choice. The first ever Dallas Mavericks draft pick was Kiki Vandeweghe, a future NBA All-Star that refused to play for the franchise and held out the first month of the season before being traded to the Washington Bullets, along with a first-round pick in 1981 for a first-round pick in 1981 and 1985 that would turn into Orlando Blackman and Sam Perkins. The Mavericks nailed the 1981 NBA draft and eventually built a Western Conference contender in the mid-80s. The Mavericks' inaugural game was on October 11, 1980, and the 103-92 win over the Spurs, led by George Gervin. Winfred Boyens led them in scoring that night with 21 points and was the centerpiece of a starting lineup with him, Tom Lagarde, Jeff Houston, Abdul Jelani, and Jerome Whitehead. The magic of opening night would quickly fade, though as the overmatched Mavericks team finished the 1980-81 season at 1567, the worst record in the NBA. So they had the number one pick of the 1981 NBA draft, and they selected the new face of the franchise and the power forward, Mark Aguirre. Aguirre would be a fantastic player for the Mavericks for the better part of the decade, making 3 NBA All-Star appearances, averaging 25, 6, and 4. That's what passed on a future NBA MVP, 2-time NBA champion, 12-time NBA All-Star, and fellow Chicago product Isaiah Thomas. People forget how good Mark Aguirre was. He scored 14,488 points in the 80s, which is more than Thomas, Magic Johnson, and Julius Erving, to name a few. The Mavericks used the number 9 pick that was acquired from the Bulls to draft the other great player in the 1980s, 4-time NBA All-Star Orlando Blackman. They also drafted Jay Vincent in the second round, the guy who would start for them and average 17, 6, and 5 for their pretty good teams in the 80s. So this draft was one of the more underrated drafts for a team in NBA history. Because you had the core of Mark Aguirre, Orlando Blackman, and Jay Vincent, and take the Dallas Mavericks long to be competitive as an NBA team. They improved by 13 games, went 28-54. In 1982, they selected Bill Garnett instead of drafting. They could have drafted James Worthy, Terry Cummings, or Dominique Wilkins, but they drafted this guy. But in '83, they drafted Dale Ellis, the 9th pick, and then they drafted point guard Derek Harper. Then they drafted Suns Mark West, future starting center for the Suns Mark West in the second round. So Mavericks became a fixture in the playoffs in the mid-'80s. They went 43-39, 1983-84, fourth in the Western Conference. Aguirre started to elevate his game. He was the first Maverick to be named to an NBA All-Star team, averaging 29.5 points a game, 5.9 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game, shooting 52%. Blackman added 22.4 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 3.6 assists per game. Brad Davis, Pat Cummings, and Jay Vincent averaged double figures as well for scoring. They would face off against Gus Williams, Jack Sittler, and Tom Chambers in the Seattle Seahawks Supersonics in their first ever playoff series in the first round of NBA playoffs in 1984. So this series went 5 games. So the Mavericks came back, earned a huge win in a row in Game 4 by a score of 107 to the 96 to keep this season alive, sending the series back to Dallas for a winner-take-all Game 5. Aguirre had 29 points, Vincent had 21, Blackman had 20 points all, had 20 points or more in the win. The last 4 games of the first round series were played in different venues due to scheduling conflicts. So Game 5 was played at Moody Coliseum on SMU's campus, a venue that was housed only 9,000 seats. So in this Game 5, had a wild ending. Dallas trailed by 6 with 48 seconds left. Then Cummings made a pair of free throws to get within 4. Seattle's next 2 possessions ended with backcourt turnovers. The Mavericks only scored on the second one. Now they were down by 2. Wyatt committed a foul before the clock started, giving the Sonics a free throw and the ball back. A potentially clinching combination, but Wood against the foul shot. Steve Halls failed to get off the inbounds pass, even though Seattle had called a timeout to set up the play. Blackman fouled with a jumper that hit the brim and backboard before dropping in for the tie. The Sonics missed 2 chances to win at the end of regulation. Dallas went up by 6 in overtime, but still ahead by 3 with 5 seconds to go. With Jay Vincent, who made 31 straight free throws, went to the line. He missed both. Then Tom Chambers scored to get the Sonics within 1 with the second left. After the timeout, Vincent stood at half court ready to throw the ball in. Instead of aiming for the team, he told to initially ricochet the ball off of Chambers, who was defending him. Chambers ended up catching the ball and putting up a 50-footer. It was nowhere near the basket. The Mavericks ran off the court in celebration in the locker room. They began ripping off their tape and piling up their sweaty uniforms. They didn't notice that the clock never started. So referee Maverick had declared the game was over. 1 second was still on the scoreboard. Then time should have started once Chambers touched the ball. But the 2 main clock operators were out of town, and the backup crew messed up. While Matthews and officials Jake Godano and Tommy Nunez discussed what to do, the Sonics begged for another chance. Fans chanted, "Go home, Seattle." Godano selected Matthews blew his whistle inadvertently rather than giving Dallas the ball, essentially replaying the final sequence. He said the Sonics deserved the ball because Chambers stole it. Matthews was so afraid of what might have happened if Mavericks lost that he asked the security guard to protect him. Sonju went to the locker room to break the news and pleaded for Modest to calm down, fearing that he'd get a technical. He followed players screwery to get dressed. Seattle's big break went nowhere. Halls tried to allow to Chambers, but 2 Mavericks knocked it away. The final score was Dallas 105, Seattle 104. The Mavericks ended up scoring the Sonics in the series 486 to 485, with the final deciding game of the series going to overtime and coming down to the final second quarter series. Then the Mavericks' prize for winning their first NBA playoff series in franchise history was a second-round matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers, who already won 2 championships. Obviously, Kareem and Magic was on the team, worthy. The Lakers dominated the Mavericks. Won the series in 5 games, 4 games to 1, outscoring Dallas by 72 points in the series. So in '85, they had almost an identical record. They had a 44 and 38 record. McGuire was still, again, an all-star. 125.7 points, 6 rebounds, 3.1 assists. Blackman was an all-star for the first time. Sam Perkins, they drafted him at number four. He averaged 11 points on the all-rookie team. They played the Portland Trailblazers in the first round. They were led by Kiki Vandeweghe. Clyde Drexler, Michael Thompson. They lost to Portland. They lost the next 2 games of the series in Portland, including a 115-113 heartbreak in Game 4 to end their season despite 39 points from McGuire. Blackman was an absolute stud in the series, though, of averaging 33, 6, and 5, and 51% shooting. The Mavericks selected future Pacer and Sonic Detlef Schrempf with the 8th pick of the 1985 NBA draft. Future Chicago Bull Bill Wennington with the 16th pick. McGuire led the team in scoring for the 5th straight season with 22.6 points per game to go along with 6.0 rebounds and 4.6 assists a game. But he was snubbed in 1986 as an All-Star. Blackman averaged 21.5 points per game, was named to his 2nd consecutive NBA All-Star game in 1986. Perkins averaged 15.4 points a game, 8.6 rebounds in his sophomore season. Derek Harper averaged 12.2 points a game, 5.3 assists, 1.9 steals per game. So the Mavericks 1986 draft, 1986 NBA playoffs faced the Utah Jazz that were led by Karl Malone, who was a rookie, Thurl Bailey, and John Stockton was in his second season. The Mavericks ended up winning this series in 4 games, um, behind 29 points and 12 rebounds by Sam Perkins and 28 points and 8 assists, 7 rebounds by Aguirre. So they ended up playing the Lakers again, ended up losing to the Lakers. They lost in 6 games. They lost in six games. Magic Johnson had 21 points, 17 assists to win the series in 6. They 1986 NBA draft, they drafted Roy Tarpley. So Dallas became a 50-win team in 1986-87 and is one win away from the NBA Finals in 1988. So things got better with this franchise at that time in the 80s. 86-87, they won 55 games, lost only 27. Aguirre led the team in scoring again. He was an all-star. He was an all-star in 1987, averaging 25.7 points a game, 5.3 rebounds a game. Another all-star appearance for the third straight year time for Blackman. Averaging 21 points a game. We had Harper, Perkins, and James Donaldson. Had a great lineup doing their thing. So they were the number 2 seed into the Western Conference in 1987, but they were square off against Seattle. Supersonics led by Tom Chambers, Xavier McDaniel, and former bench player Dale Ellis when they traded in the previous offseason. And they dealt away Jay Vincent as well for a first-round pick in the 1990. The Sonics in the first round. So that was one of the biggest shootouts in NBA playoff history. They won 151 to 129 in the 4th highest scoring playoff game in NBA history at the time. 9 different Mavericks players had scored in double figures, led by Aguirre with 28. But the Mavericks experienced their first huge disappointment, though. The Sonics will win the final 3 games of the series to upset the Mavericks 3-1. And they were led by Dale Ellis, who had an axe to grind with the Mavericks. He wanted to show what he was capable of. He averaged 38 and 5 for the series. So you had the core moving forward, like Aguirre, Blackman, Harper, Perkins, Donaldson, Tarpley, Brad Davis, Delaware Shrimp. They came back for the 1987-88 season as a top-tier team once again. They won 53 games, lost 29, third in the West. Aguirre was an NBA All-Star for the third and final time in 1988, averaging 25.1 points, 5.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists a game. James Donaldson is without question the most NBA All-Star selection in league history. He averaged 7.1 points, 9.8 rebounds per game for the 1987-88 season. He was a star for a good team, but even his own teammate, Roy Tarpley, deserved more. He averaged 13.5 points, 11.8 rebounds per game. He was named NBA Sixth Man of the Year in 1987-88. So he faced the Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets in 1988. And they beat them in 4 games, 3-1. 6 Mavericks players averaging double figures. And then they faced the Denver Nuggets, led by Alex English and Fat Lever. They won that series in 6 games, I believe. Yeah, they won in 6. Sam Perkins had 23 points, 11 rebounds, 18 points, 19 rebounds by Roy Tarpley. They won 108 to 95 to advance to the Western Conference Finals. The first one in their 8 years of existence. The series overall went 7 games. They lost it in 7 games, 117 to 102. About 24 points, 11 rebounds, 11 assists and 9 rebounds by Magic Johnson. This would be the closest the Mavericks would come to the NBA Finals for almost 20 years. In 3 playoff series against the Lakers in 1984, 86, and 88, the Mavericks were never able to win a game on the road in Los Angeles. They were 0-10. So this marked the end of the first great era of Mavericks basketball, as the Niners wouldn't be a considered organization. So the Mavericks traded Aguirre to the Pistons in 1989. the expectation was coming for 88, 89, but then live up to it. The substance abuse issues that Morris Hartley had to deal with. James Donaldson got dealt with injury issues. They were 25 and 21 at the deadline in 1989. They traded their best player, Margaret Wyatt, to the Pistons. And Adrian Dantley was at the end of his NBA prime at the age of 33. Never really meshed with the team, Detroit. And the Mavericks struggled over the last 2 months of the season to finish 38 and 44, missed the playoffs for the first time since 1983. So Aguirre would go on to win multiple championships with the Detroit Pistons in 1989, 80, 1990. And they made another poor trade. They dealt away Detlef Schrempf for Herb Williams. And Detlef Schrempf would become a very good player for the Pacers and Sonics in the 1990s. Then at the beginning of the 90s, 1989-90 season, they went 47 and 35, but they were swept in the first round by the Blazers. And then here comes the 90s, they're just terrible, very bad. They're 199 and 507 during the 90s. From 1990-91 season to the 1998-99 season, they were 199 507. They were terrible. They drafted Doug Smith, who was a bust. They could have drafted Steve Smith coming out of Michigan State. But then when you look at, they did draft Jim Jackson, Jamal Mashburn, Jason Kidd, but things didn't work out. Now you had those three guys, man, Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson, had great talent during the 90s, 94, 95 season, but they never made it to the playoffs. Despite Kidd winning Cobra Gear of the Year, they were popular. They were doing their thing, but not good enough. So then Jason Kidd gets traded to the Phoenix Suns for Sam Cassell, Michael Finley, AC Green, second round draft pick. So they traded Jim Jackson. Jamal Mashburn, he went to Miami Heat. So stuff like that was going on. So there's a lot of stuff going on at that time. Things changed once they got, Dirk Nowitzki. Once he came on the scene, playing for Down Nelson, and Michael Finley, Gary Trent, Cedric Ceballos, Sean Bradley, Steve Nash, and you had rookie Dirk Nowitzki. Now they was on their way to doing some great things. So we become a perennial Western Conference contender during the early 2000s with Dirk Nash developed into stars. 51 team in 2000-2001 season. Dirk Nowitzki averaged 21.8 points a game, 9.2 rebounds per game. Michael Finley averaged 21.5 points a game, 5.2 rebounds a game, 4.4 assists a game. Then Steve Nash made a quantum leap in the fifth season, averaging 15.6 points, 7.5 assists, 48%, shooting 48%, 40%, 89%, stuff like that. I'm going to say acquired Juwan Howard. He faced the Utah Jazz. So the Advance beat Utah in 5 games. They faced the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs beat Dallas in 5 games. Then 2001 NBA players started to see Dirk Nowitzki become a superstar, emerging 2001-2002 season. They had 57-25. Dirk Nowitzki was on the All-NBA second team. They swept Minnesota with Kevin Garnett, Chauncey Billups on the team. On that team, Chauncey Billups? I think that's why it needs some incorrection. check. Chauncey Billups on that Sultan Wilson. Yeah, he did play for Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay, he did. Who became a Piston? Okay, got it. Right back to the scheduled program. All right. So they advanced to the semifinals. Played the Sacramento Kings. Kings beat them. The games that was. I don't see it. But they did lose. They became a 60-win team. Knocked on the door of the NBA Finals in 2003, but they lost to San Antonio. Lost them in 6 games. Can't stop Steve Kerr. They lost Steve Nash to free agency. There's a lot of big trades that gave away the Prince, Avery Johnson, Van Exel, for Antoine Jameson, Antoine Walker. Nash went to Phoenix. He would go on to win 2 MVPs back to back in 2005 season, 2006 season. They lost to Nash in the 2005 playoffs. They finally went to the 2006 NBA Finals. They lost to the Miami Heat. Couldn't stop Dwayne Wade. They were deep. They had Core, Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry, Josh Howard, Jerry Stackhouse, Marquise Daniels, Eric Dampier, Devin. It's Delvin Harris, I think. Keith Van Horn and Desanya Doc. They won 60 games, doing their thing. Dirk was at his peak, averaging 26.6 points a game, 9 rebounds, stuff like that. They lost in the finals. Beat the Spurs, and then in 7 games, they went to the finals. That was a great, conference finals, semifinals between Spurs and the Mavericks. Dirk Nowitzki and Tim Duncan on the opposite sides. They went on to go to the finals, and they blew a 2-0 lead, facing the Heat team with Dwayne Wade, Shaq, on that team, Lars Moore, Jason Williams on that team, Gary Payton, and Antoine Walker. They were up 2-0. I think it just changed after that. They lost the next 4 games. After they blew a 2-0 lead. Then the following season, 2006-2007, despite the winning MVP, they got upset by the Warriors. Won 67 games that year. They lost to Golden State that first round playoffs. The Warriors had Baron Davis, Steven Jackson, Jason Richardson. Don Nelson was coaching that team. They got knocked out. Then in 2011, they was able to make it to the finals, knock off LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. That team for a great upset. They won that series. won what, 6 games, I believe. That was a shocker of a win at that time. They won 6 games. Dirk Nowitzki averaged 26 points, 10 rebounds for the series, and was an MVP of the finals. So I get a little older in 2011-2012 season. Dirk Nowitzki was 33 years old. Jason Taylor was 34. Sean Marion 33. Jason Kidd 38. Vince Carter 35. Delonte West 28. Brandon Haywood 32. Lamar Odom 32. So these guys getting older as a core. And you get Luka Doncic, who's now with the Lakers. He's for that trade with Trey Young. 2018 draft was a great trade for them. He would end up leading Dallas to the finals. Became a superstar. Good Doncic. He lost to the Celtics. I have that in the chapter where they lead to the finals. Right, so let's get to the finality of this live feed in his book. What if the Dallas Mavericks had drafted Charles Barkley, 1984 draft? That'd be it for today. Right, that's the question right here. What if the Dallas Mavericks had drafted Charles Barkley in 1984? Now, the Mavericks entered the 1984 NBA draft coming off their first winning season, a playoff series victory in their brief 4-year history. They decided to take Sam Perkins, the number 4 pick of the 1984 NBA draft. And Perkins was a very solid NBA player, averaging 11.9 points and 6.5 rebounds over his 18-year NBA career. He spent 6 productive seasons with the Mavericks from 1984 to 1990, averaging 14.4 points, 8 rebounds per game. Far from terrible value, even for the 4 pick in the NBA draft. One reason this is the chosen what if for the Dallas Mavericks, who they could have taken at number 5, Charles Barkley, is that Charles Barkley is the top 25 player in NBA history, averaging 22.1 points, 11.7 rebounds, 3.9 assists in a 16-year Hall of Fame career. He won the MVP of the NBA in the 1992-93 season, averaging 25.6 points, 12.2 rebounds, 5.1 assists, 1.6 steals with the Phoenix Suns. So imagine if a young Barkley on a talented Mavericks team in the mid-'80s, a team that came a win away from the NBA Finals in 1988. If Dallas added Barkley to a core of Michael Aguirre, Ronaldo Blackman, Derek Harper, Roy Tarpley, and James Downson, that put them over the top to challenge the Lakers' domination of the Western Conference in the 1980s. Barkley was a bona fide NBA superstar by his third season, 1986-87, because he averaged 23 points, 14.6 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 1.8 steals, 1.5 blocks, making the first of 11 All NBA appearances. Placing Perkins with Barkley on a 55-win Mavericks team in '87 likely bumps them to a 60-win team. Mavericks team that lost in 4 games in the first round to the Seattle Sonics set rose to the Suns and Rockets' success over the clash of the Titans with the Lakers in the 1987 Western Conference Finals. The Lakers still escaped in 7 games and defeated the Celtics for the 1987 NBA Championship. With Barkley and Tao in 1988, Aguirre, Blackman, Harper, and Tarpley in their primes, the Mavericks win 61 games and overcome the Lakers in 6 games in the 1988 Western Conference Finals. As good as the Pistons were in 1988, losing the Lakers in the same 7 games in the 1988 NBA Finals, they weren't quite the team they would become over the next 2 seasons. They won 54 games in 1987-88 with Aguirre on their roster. The Mavericks beat the Pistons in 7 games in the class of 1988 NBA Finals, and Charles Barkley becomes the first superstar from the legendary 1984 NBA draft class to win an NBA title. Barkley easily matches the physicality of the bad boy Pistons, averaging 29 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and taking home an NBA Finals MVP award. Charles Barkley becomes the biggest star in the NBA at the end of the 80s, instead of Jordan, coming off an NBA championship. The Mavericks never trade Aguirre for Dantley and find themselves in the NBA Finals again in 1989, this time losing to the Pistons in 6 games. The wheels start to fall off a bit in 1990 as Barkley's drinking buddy, Roy Tarpley, deals with suspension for his off-the-court issues, and Aguirre and Blackman start to show their signs of decline. They win 54 games and are defeated in the Western Conference semifinals by the Lakers of Los Angeles in 6 games. The Lakers go on to lose to the Pistons in 1990 NBA Finals in 7 games. They shift the organization and Barkley starts to sour in the 1990-91 season as they win 49 games, losing the first round of 1991 NBA playoffs to the Lakers in 4 games. After blowing up the core around Barkley in the 1991 NBA offseason, it's clear that Barkley is on his way out of town. The Mavericks win 43 games in the 1991-92 season, swept by the Portland Trailblazers in the first round. Barkley traded in the 1992 NBA offseason. The Phoenix Suns for Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. So here the Chicago Charles Barkley being drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, alternate universe outcomes. Number 1, Charles Barkley and the Dallas Mavericks won the NBA championship in 1988, beating the Pistons of Detroit. Number 2, the Dallas Mavericks win their first NBA title in 23 years. Earlier, and make back-to-back NBA Finals appearances to close out the 80s. Charles Barkley's legacy is redefined. He is viewed as the best power forward in NBA history, not named Tim Duncan in the top 15 all-time player. Barkley wins the NBA title before Jordan does and is the most popular player in the NBA in the late 80s. Mark Aguirre is never traded to the Pistons in 1989 and plays his entire career in Dallas. Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar have 2 less NBA Finals appearances and 1 less NBA championship. Mark Aguirre is in the NBA Hall of Fame. And finally, the Mavericks never have quite, possibly the worst 3-year stretch for a team in NBA history from 1991 to 1993. So let's look at the Dallas Mavericks from the Ultimate NBA History and What If book. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So next time being this book would be about the the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets. We'll talk about them. Next time being this book, Denver Nuggets. That's it for today. I was in chapter 16 today. Read about the law and the prophets. Being in chapter 17, the Sermon on the Mount book, The Great Teachings of Jesus. That's coming up on Monday. And I'll be talking about the Denver Nuggets from this book. What If? Ultimate NBA History book. Great book. So until then, talk to you on Monday. Chapter 16 being chapter 17 on Monday. Mission accomplished. Do not think I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. That's it. That's going to be talked about on Monday. Mission accomplished. So until then, thanks for tuning in. Talk to you on Monday.